Good morning, everyone. I call to order this fifth meeting for the Public Utility Commission for calendar year 2013 and ask that you all join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on this morning's agenda is the coordination of ties here at the bench, and I want to recognize my colleagues that have worn their green here. Probably the most Irish of us is Commissioner Cawley, and I think it's a boycott. I'm going to call into question whether he really did go to Notre Dame or not, because he didn't wear his emerald green this morning, but he's part of our celebration, so he's never an outlier. No 15-page statement here this morning.
These are Notre Dame's colors.
That is true. So we'll give you a reprieve for today.
Mr. Chairman, not everybody wears a tie. Just letting you know.
Well, you're more than welcome to join us someday. Well, with that in mind, let's get serious here. We're going to approve, hopefully, the minutes from the February 14th meeting, and I'd like to recognize Vice Chairman Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've reviewed the minutes of the February 14th, 2013 public meeting and move they be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as submitted. It's a pleasure to welcome to the podium this morning to begin the official agenda for this morning's meeting, Ms. Cheryl Walker-Davis. Cheryl, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
May it please this Honorable Commission, on behalf of your various offices and bureaus, we present for your consideration and disposition the following agenda items. Commencing this morning with matters on behalf of the Bureau of Audits, it is recommended in omnibus fashion that the Commission adopt all items appearing on page 1, commencing with the recommendation to release the audit report of NetEd with regard to its energy efficiency and conservation charge, and concluding with the Newtown or Kingston request for a purchase water adjustment charge waiver.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Turning now to matters on behalf of the Office of Special Assistance, commencing on page 2. The first item there appearing is the complaint of the Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement against Lester Souter, and there is the motion of Vice Chairman Coleman.
I'd like to recognize Vice Chairman Coleman for purposes of his motion. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask that my motion be entered into the record as though I read it in its entirety. Before the Commission for consideration is the letter petition filed on December 24, 2012 by Lester Souter. On September 22, 2012, the Commission's Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement served a complaint against Mr. Souter, alleging that he failed to maintain evidence of cargo insurance on file with the Commission, which is a violation of the Public Utility Code. On September 28, 2012, Mr. Souter's insurer filed evidence of insurance with the effective date of April 27, 2012. Because Mr. Souter did not file an answer to the complaint or pay the fine, the Commission on November 15, 2012 issued a secretarial letter sustaining the complaint and directed Mr. Souter to pay a $500 penalty. Mr. Souter's petition indicates that upon receipt of the secretarial letter, he immediately contacted his insurance company, who forwarded the required insurance paperwork to the Commission. Through this action, Mr. Souter thought he had completed the necessary steps to rectify the matter. He asked for reconsideration of the fine and to reinstate his authority. Maintaining proper evidence of insurance on file with the Commission is necessary to ensure the safe transportation of passengers and goods. As such, carriers are reminded that they are ultimately the party responsible for ensuring compliance with Commission regulations, and so must be diligent in responding directly to the Commission as soon as notices are received, in addition to working with their insurance company to ensure adequate evidence of insurance has been properly filed. In this case, due to Mr. Souter's diligence in ensuring that the insurer immediately filed the necessary proof of insurance, his favorable compliance history, and most importantly, the fact that there was no lapse of insurance, I believe the fine should be reduced. Accordingly, I recommend reducing the fine to $250. Therefore, I move that Mr. Souter be directed to pay a civil penalty in the amount of $250, and the Office of Special Assistance prepare an order consistent with this motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
It is recommended that the Commission adopt the remaining OSA items, commencing with the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement's complaint against Germantown Cab Company on page 3, and continuing and including all items on pages 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, through and including the interconnection agreement of Verizon North and Transbeam.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
On behalf of the Bureau of Technical Utility Services, it is recommended that the Commission adopt all items appearing on page 12, commencing with the recommendation pertaining to Coral Power and including all items on pages 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, through and including the rate increase request of the Sugar Valley Telephone Company.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
On behalf of the Law Bureau, it is recommended on page 18 that the Commission adopt both recommendations there appearing through and including the rate-making pertaining to the rulemaking on regulations addressing the review of long-term infrastructure improvement plans.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Should be noted, now turning to the Office of Administrative Law Judge, that the three items appearing on page 19 pertaining to the Duquesne Light Company's petition for approval of its smart meter plan, the complaint proceeding involving Atafia Robertson versus Philadelphia Gas Works, and the complaint proceeding involving Daniel Brown versus Pico Energy Company have all been postponed until public meeting of April the 4th. That having been said, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the remaining recommendations of the Office of Administrative Law Judge appearing on pages 20 and 21, through and including ALJ Salapa's recommended decision in the Universal Service Charge proceeding involving the Metropolitan Edison Company.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the presentation of regular agenda items. Turning now to the carry-in agenda. It is recommended that the Commission adopt the first item there appearing pertaining to the recommendation on the Commission's own motion with regard to the default service plans of Pico Energy Company, the First Energy Companies, PPL Electric, and Duquesne Light Company.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
It is recommended that the Commission adopt the staff recommendation with regard to the Med-Ed, Penelec, Penn Power, and West Penn Power Company Act 129 Phase 2 plans, noting the statement of Commissioner Cawley.
So moved.
Second.
I'd like to recognize Commissioner Cawley for purposes of statement. Commissioner Cawley.
Thank you, Chairman. I asked my statement to be placed on the record as if I had read it in its entirety. My statement expresses my concern that this plan of the First Energy Companies relies too heavily on short-term measures. The company plans to distribute 354,000 energy kits over the next 3 years. I'm just concerned that these are more short-term measures or more longer-term measures are required. As I say in my statement, giving away entirely free products or relying heavily on short-term behavioral measures may not be the most optimal means of promoting a sustainable energy efficiency economy in Pennsylvania. Otherwise, I support the staff recommendation, but urge the company to monitor the progress of this plan and to make adjustments if necessary, because I'm fearful that there's very little allowance for error here, and the company may not meet its goals.
Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously, noting the statement of Commissioner Cawley.
It is recommended that the Commission adopt the staff recommendation in the proceeding involving the PPL Electric Utilities Corporation's Act 129 Phase 2 Energy Efficiency and Conservation Plan.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
And it is recommended that the Commission adopt the staff recommendation pertaining to the Duquesne Light Company Act 129 Phase 2 Energy Efficiency and Conservation Plan, noting, Mr. Chairman, that on March the 13th, a letter was received from the Congress of Neighboring Communities That letter has been placed in the public folder in this proceeding, and it has been posted to the Commission's website and has not been relied upon by the Commission in its determinations herein.
So noted. We'll move this case. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, that does conclude the presentation of agenda items.
Before we adjourn, we have two quick announcements. One is our next public meeting, we will be back in Hearing Room 1 over in the Keystone Building. And this morning, it is really an honor. It's almost hard to believe that I'll look out in the audience here and I won't see my good friend, our good friend, Mr. Joe Clea. And I see him taking his glasses off. He's crossing his hands. He's like, what's Powelson going to do here to me this morning? Joe, I'm going to be very respectful. That's how I'm going to start this discussion. You have been a dear friend of this commission. You started your career here back in 1977 in the Bureau of Rates and Research, which is no longer thanks to the reorganization. Actually, that's probably many reorganizations ago. And then you went on to be a fixed utility financial analyst with an emphasis on electric utility issues, worked on cost allocation models, revenue requirements, and just a little factoid. They were throwing some metrics at me this morning. He's attended, I think it was like over 1,000 plus public input sessions, testified in over 100 proceedings here at the commission. And I noticed in 1991 you went to that building in Allentown to start your career with a very well-run electric utility in PPL. And we know, like many people in this room, you're a proud Penn State graduate. I understand you partake in many of the games up in Happy Valley. And you're going to be turning a new chapter in your life, and one that I think the five of us will miss not seeing you. Unfortunately, we cannot bring you back as an annuitant. We just don't have it in the budget. But PPL certainly can. The other thing I really respect about Joe is, well, I said many things, but really one of the things I truly respect about Joe, and I think all of us can attest to this, is, there's an old saying, there are workhorses and show horses. Joe is a true workhorse in the sense that there isn't a point in time, whether it's leading up to public meeting or post-public meeting, where I see him in one of our offices meeting with our staff. I've never seen you lose your cool. Well, the one time I think I got you pushed your buttons a little bit. But you are truly the epitome of a professional. And I know you're going to be missed by the management team at PPL. We're going to miss you. But again, as you begin this new chapter in your life, you can always come back to the commission and say hello to us, advise us, keep us on the straight and path. But we all want to wish you all the best in retirement. I understand you're building a new home. You're going to come back here in the Harrisburg area to be closer to your family. And the good Lord above will bless you with many fond memories of this place, but more importantly, hopefully you have a very productive retirement life. I want to be very direct with you. One of the best courses I ever took from a Jesuit university in Philadelphia. And by the way, everybody knows about the Jesuits, right? That's right. I wasn't going to go there. Jen reminded me about separation of church and state, so I don't want to cross those lines this morning. But we can talk offline about the Jesuits. Joe, again, seriously, to wish you all the best. And I think the five of us and the entire professional staff of the commission, we want to extend to you our warm wishes in your new journey in life. And you're going to be blessed with many great memories, hopefully, of the commission. And I think we'll all stand and recognize you for a job well done. Now, I forgot to mention before we adjourn, where I lost my train of thought, I got talking about the Jesuits. One of the classes I took was in HR management, and the professor, it was a very morbid thought, Joe, so I want you to think about this respectfully. He said, people who retire without hobbies, DIE. You have hobbies, I know that. So I want you to be, keep up your active lifestyle. So with that in mind, we're going to adjourn.